What if the most dangerous man in the academy was also its biggest coward, hiding underground, eating grilled monster on his stick, praying nobody noticed he existed? That is Greg Sass, and this is the story of how a guy trying to survive quietly became the accidental engine of everything. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, cold and precise, like a blade slipped under a door. The Sass household had made their decision, and their decision was simple. He was no longer their problem. Disowned, cut off, discarded like a bad investment. The official reason was missed classes, which was, objectively, the least interesting reason to destroy someone's life. But Greg Sass was not particularly concerned about the letter, because Greg Sass had a secret that changed everything. He was not the original Greg Sass. Somewhere between falling asleep in his old life and waking up in this one, his soul had been shoved sideways into the body of a fictional character. Specifically, the most doomed fictional character ever coded into existence. The game was called, and this is real, even if you are a girl. Can you enjoy multiplayer together in this kind of world? A Yuri dating sim, a girl's love game, a romance visual novel where the entire point was watching girls fall for each other. He had played it 81 times, and in all 81 playthroughs, Greg Sass existed for one purpose only: to die. 1,386 CG illustrations existed in that game. 1,380 of them were Greg dying in increasingly creative ways. The developers did not simply dislike this character. They had constructed an elaborate artistic vendetta against him. Poison needles, rope traps, monster attacks, social ruin, falling objects, every route found a new way to finish him off. And there was one more thing the devs had coded in, just to make sure nobody felt bad when he died. Every important female character in the game took one look at Greg Sass's face and felt instant, inexplicable disgust. His face was objectively beautiful. The game gave him maximum charisma, but attached to that face was what players called the Naora, a coded rejection field that made every heroine recoil on instinct. The moment he understood whose body he had woken up in, he made a decision. He ran, not metaphorically, literally, out of class across the academy grounds, and straight down into the one place his death counter had never reached: the academy dungeon. 81 playthroughs and not a single death CG had ever been set inside it, because the original Greg never went there. The developers never bothered scripting his death in a location their character never visited. It was a loophole, a beautiful, damp, monster-filled loophole, and he intended to live in it until the main story finished without him. The dungeon, as it turned out, also liked him back. He had arrived with a set of crossover abilities that made the underground almost hospitable. Damage buffs, luck protection, bonus experience, and most usefully, a talent that let him absorb skill fragments from monsters he killed. Day 1, he almost died. Day 2, he found a cave. Day 3, he discovered monster flowers that produced something like pepper powder. By day 5, he was roasting rabbit horn creatures on skewers, seasoning them properly, and writing survival notes in a diary like some underground naturalist. The plan was perfect. Hide below. Wait for the heroines to finish saving the world. Surface when the credits rolled. Then he heard a scream. 2 girls stood at the edge of the underground river. One with gray hair, reaching forward. One with pink hair, being dragged under by something coiled around her leg. Gray hair, pink hair. His brain did the math instantly, and the math was not good. The gray-haired girl was Victoria, the main character. The pink-haired girl was Sylvia, the second lead heroine. And Sylvia was drowning in a scene that had never, not once, appeared in any of his 81 playthroughs. The script had gone off-road. The plot was collapsing in real time. He was standing there holding a half-eaten rabbit kebab, watching the entire story derail. And he had maybe 10 seconds to decide what to do about it. If Sylvia died, the storyline broke. If the storyline broke, the world probably collapsed. If the world collapsed, he died anyway, just in a different and more dramatic fashion. So, jumping into a freezing underground river was not bravery. It was math. His underwater adaptation skill turned the dark current into something manageable. And he found Sylvia about 5 meters down, tangled around the ankle by an octopus monster. She was already fading, pink hair drifting in the current like something out of a horror scene that had accidentally become beautiful. She needed air. He had air. He grabbed her face and gave her mouth to mouth. Then he blasted the octopus with a water cannon, killed it in one shot, and leveled up to 16. The system rewarded him with a new skill, Tentacle Entangle, level 1, which raised more questions than it answered. The octopus also dropped a magic gem, his first item in 5 days of dungeon survival. He dove deeper to grab it before bringing Sylvia to the surface. In his defense, she was already unconscious. 5 more seconds was a calculated risk. He burst out of the water, gasping. and came face to face with the person who had killed him more times than any other character in the game. Victoria stood on the riverbank in nothing but white underwear, midway through stripping down to jump in after her friend. The dungeon lighting was doing her every possible favor. The silence between them was absolute. His mouth moved before his brain could stop it. Nice body. She said nothing. The silence became worse. His golden hair was plastered over his face from the water. Maybe she hadn't recognized him. He deepened his voice, committed to the bit. I'm just a passing river god. Please don't mind me. He placed Sylvia on the shore and began sliding back toward the water with maximum dignity. Then he heard it. Cold, clear, absolutely terrifying. Hey, Greg. The river god's strategy had lasted approximately 4 seconds. Cover blown, he climbed out, swept his wet hair back, and tried to negotiate from a position of minor moral advantage. He had saved her friend's life. That had to count for something. Victoria was not interested in accounting. She started listing the original Greg's crimes like a prosecutor reading charges into the record. Sabotage magic devices, humiliated commoners on the first day, systematic cruelty dressed up as noble privilege. Every accusation landed like a truck he had not driven, aimed at a body he had not chosen. He needed to flip the situation fast. He had one card left, something almost nobody in this world knew. He looked her dead in the gray eyes and deployed it with maximum mysterious energy. Have you ever considered that maybe I did all of that on purpose, hero Victoria? He watched the word land. Watch her go still. Right on cue, a quest notification materialized across his vision. Villain Noble's redemption. Unlocked. Clear the first dungeon floor before Act 1 ends. Success meant a full upgrade to all 3 talents. Failure meant death. CG 1381. The dungeon had apparently heard him say its kindness was too much to repay, and had immediately sent him a bill. Victoria's question came cold and quiet, murder radiating off her like warmth from a fire. Who are you? He went into speedrun mode. He was a messenger of the goddess of night, he said. She fought demons, he conquered dungeons. Different departments, same company. Not technically a lie. He had dungeon-specific talents. The system had just given him a dungeon quest. He was practically an employee. She pressed him on everything the original Greg had done. He pushed back with logic. A real saboteur would not go around bragging about it afterward. He handed her classified intelligence about her own family's church, about Sylvia's saint candidacy, about things she had no way of knowing he should know. 81 playthroughs. He knew everything. Victoria went quiet. Then, carefully, I'll keep my doubts. He shrugged. That was fine. He wasn't asking for trust. He was asking for a ceasefire. And that was when Victoria realized she had been standing in wet white underwear for this entire conversation. She crossed her arms and gave him the coldest smile in human history. Seen enough. He answered honestly. Not really, no. Look any longer, and I will pop your eyeballs out of your skull. He turned around so fast he nearly fell into the river again. After she dressed, he invited them both back to his camp, a large cave, a campfire. His filthy school jacket on the floor as a mattress. Victoria looked around and said, pure disgust, with the flat finality of a professional critic delivering a 1-star verdict. He told her it was big. He never said it was furnished. They sat across the fire, Victoria checking her backpack. Sylvia is still unconscious, and everything might have been fine. Then Victoria pulled out items from the bottom of her bag. A small dark metal box with strange engravings. A bundle of dried brown roots tied with rope. Every cell in his body screamed. He knew exactly what those were. Don't eat the sour radish, he screamed, and his voice probably shook the cave walls. The box was a trap, wrong sequence on the puzzle lock, and a poison needle shot through your forehead. He had seen the CG. The root bundle was worse. Magic into it, place it under a pillow, and it came alive in the night and hanged you in your sleep. He had seen that CG too. To Greg's specific murder weapons, sitting on the ground like harmless souvenirs, and the protagonist had just casually unpacked them both. This dungeon was never going to let him rest. Victoria stared at him like he had lost his mind. He pivoted instantly into his most convincing religious voice. As a devoted follower of the goddess of night, he explained. These 2 objects were considered deeply unholy in his faith. They needed to be disposed of immediately. She looked at a rusty box and some dried roots. Your religion is weird. Every faith has its quirks, he said smoothly. And he listed enough real church customs around the edges that the explanation sounded plausible. She shrugged, told him to get rid of them. Release them into the river, he said. Flowing water cleanses sins that should not remain in this world. Victoria tossed both items into the dark current. He watched them sink and nearly collapsed with relief. To death flags neutralized. A new permanent entry added to his survival guide. Then Sylvia woke up. She groaned, opened her eyes, spotted him, and recoiled at a 45-degree angle. The Naora working exactly as the developers intended. She stammered through an apology, then her memory started coming back. The underwater attack. The loss of consciousness. Something that felt like a kiss. Victoria's head turned toward him at a speed that should have been medically concerning. Ice-cold murder weapons where her eyes used to be. Magic light beginning to form in her fingertips. He kept his face perfectly calm. His legs were shaking like a small dog in a thunderstorm. He explained calmly, with complete conviction, that the sensation Sylvia remembered was the octopus's suction cup, brushing her lips. He made the logic airtight. If he had kissed her, why would he drag her deeper underwater afterward? What kind of unhinged logic was that? Victoria's fingers dimmed slightly. Then Sylvia, sweet and innocent and entirely unaware of the crisis she was creating, offered to verify his claim with an ancient religious test. The Goddess of Light's church apparently preserved certain rituals that could detect the power of the night goddess, her twin sister deity. His entire fabricated cover story could be fact-checked, right now, in this cave. Victoria gave him zero runway. Get over here. Test time. He tried one last dodge. My devotion comes from the heart. External tests are an insult to faith itself. I'm counting to 3. He walked over like a man heading to his own execution, drafting excuse speeches in his head for when the test inevitably exposed everything. Sylvia pressed her palms together, chanted an ancient prayer, and golden light poured from her hands and wrapped around his entire body. He closed his eyes. Here it comes. Fraud detected, initiating consequences. But nothing bad happened. The golden light touched him and changed. The gold dissolved away and was replaced by something deep and vast, an endless black, that moved like a calm night sky. It wrapped around him gently, ancient and quiet, like something that had been waiting a very long time to find its way home. Sylvia's hands flew to her mouth, eyes wide as plates, the blessing of night, so pure. She turned to Victoria, voice shaking. He really is a messenger of the goddess of night. He stood there staring at the black glow around his body like it belonged to someone else. He had made this up. 20 minutes ago. He had fabricated this identity out of Lord documents and desperation. How was it real? Victoria stared at the fading dark light, stayed quiet for a long moment, then said in a slightly less murderous tone that he was apparently not completely rotten. At least about this. He had not been lying. He had no idea what was happening, but he was rolling with it. Sylvia relaxed, pressing her hands together with relief, and said something that made him go very still. As a messenger of the goddess of night, she explained, he definitely would not dare to. And then she stopped, blushing. He pressed her, genuinely alarmed, and she eventually screamed it out like ripping off a bandage. If a messenger of the night goddess behaved inappropriately, their equipment would be covered in holy light for a year, and then disappear entirely. He stared at her. She buried her burning face in her hands. He excused himself, walked behind a large rock, looked down. It was glowing, a soft, unmistakably holy white aura wrapped around his critical infrastructure, complete with what sounded like faint background choir music. He stared at it for a few seconds. It actually looked kind of cool, like legendary tier equipment. This was a crisis. He walked back to the campfire with the heavy steps of a man who had seen too much. Just asking for a friend, he said, voice hollow. Was there any way to reverse the situation? Victoria smirked. If it was his friend, he was probably worthless scum, and the world would be better off without people like that. He gripped his fist with passionate intensity, eyes genuinely getting misty. That friend is nothing like me. He's pure. He's kind. He was clearly framed. Oscar-worthy performance. Sylvia was moved. There was a way to break it, she said. A purification ritual performed by the saint of the Church of Light. But the current saint hated the goddess of night and everything connected to her. She probably would not help. However, once Sylvia officially became the saint, she could perform the ritual herself. His brain immediately simulated that future scenario in full, horrifying detail. Walking up to Saint Sylvia at her coronation, saying, hey, remember that kiss underwater? That was me. Also, the cursed friend is me. Can you help? Sylvia's holy smile freezing, her eyes igniting with sacred fury. 1,000 arrows of divine light. Death CG 1381. Asking Sylvia was suicide. His only real option was convincing the current saint before she was replaced. His life kept getting more complicated. He thanked Sylvia warmly, told her he would pass the wonderful news to his friend, and moved on. He asked why the first-year students were even in the dungeon. The recommended level was 20, and these two were well below that. Victoria hesitated, then told him she needed a gem for the upcoming class placement exam. He worked it out fast. She should have gotten one from a duel that never happened because he had sprint run himself underground before it could occur. She had also apparently walked up to the academy storage teacher and pointed at the gem embedded in the teacher's personal staff and said she would take that one. "You picked the lunatic option," he said, with perfect neutrality. She frowned. "How did you know that?" In 81 playthroughs, the game had always offered 3 dialogue choices to normal ones, one completely unhinged one. He had always assumed the third option was the developers being playful. He was now realizing the third option was what Victoria actually chose when left unsupervised. Players had been keeping her sane this whole time, without player guidance. This girl was a chaos gremlin who had speedrun herself into poverty on day 1. He respected it, genuinely, and also recognized it was partially his fault. He tossed her the gem he had looted from the octopus earlier. Sylvia gasped, a reflect gem, rare, among basic gems. Victoria caught it, narrowed her eyes. "What do you want?" He kept it simple. After she passed her placement exam, he needed her help clearing dungeon floor 1. She asked what stopped her from just taking the gem and disappearing. He shrugged. "Then I misjudged you." After 81 playthroughs, he knew this character's core trait better than she knew herself. She kept her promises. Every heroine fell for her because of it. She stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Deal made. Once Sylvia's clothes dried by the fire, they got ready to leave. Sylvia asked if he was coming back to the academy with them. He stared into the dark depths of the cave with maximum protagonist energy. "My battlefield is here. Before I can conquer this darkness, I must first understand it." Sylvia looked genuinely impressed. Score 1 for dramatic acting. They turned to leave. Then Sylvia paused. "His personal maid," she said, "Ellie. After he was disowned, she quit the Sass household and was asked to leave campus, since non-nobles could not keep personal servants there." In the game, Ellie was a gorgeous, absurdly powerful maid with total loyalty to Greg, the only character who never abandoned him. She walked into every death route right beside him, and when he died, she died right after. Not because she had to, because she chose to. Hearing she had left the household made him happy. She was free now. "Did she leave a message?" he asked. Sylvia recited it cheerfully. If he didn't show his face within 1 week, Ellie would march into the dungeon herself, throw him a magnificent funeral, and then kill herself. Smiley face. Sylvia giggled. What a devoted maid. He was so lucky. She waved goodbye and jogged after Victoria. The cave went quiet. His smile slowly froze on his face. Sylvia thought that was an exaggeration. It was not. Ellie was being 100% dead serious. How many days had already passed since she said it? Back on the surface, Victoria and Sylvia debriefed outside the dungeon entrance, and apparently had a full therapy session about him. Sylvia was making his case like a defense attorney. He jumped into a raging river to save her. The night goddess blessing could not be fake. Victoria was less sold, but clearly confused. The arrogant monster from the first week, and the calm guy who tossed away a rare gem on pure trust. She could not make those two versions fit. Good. Confusion was better than hatred. He would take it. But then, right as they were leaving the dungeon entrance, someone slipped past them and disappeared inside. Victoria caught a flash of movement. When she looked, nothing was there. Before she could think about it, 3 maids in matching uniforms materialized from the shadows and surrounded her in a triangle formation. The first pinched her cheek, the second analyzed her chest measurements with clinical precision. The third gasped at her leg shape and called it superior to their targets. Even after years of royal posture correction, Victoria was approximately 1 second from committing triple homicide. When the third option made her pause, a tiny smug smirk appearing at the compliment about her legs. Then one of them licked her, to confirm identity by taste. Having completed their inspection, all 3 maids curtsied and explained. They were searching for a red-haired girl, the kingdom's second princess, Lilith Karn. Same year as Victoria and Sylvia. Already a campus celebrity. Rumored to have mastered Inferno Blast, one of the highest-tier fire spells, at level 10. An absolute monster of a prodigy. And the biggest threat in the upcoming placement exam. Victoria's eyes sharpened. Not with fear. With excitement. Meanwhile, the 3 maids sighed collectively. The runaway princess was still missing. And someone had just slipped into the dungeon right before they arrived. He had a feeling his peaceful underground life was about to get significantly more crowded. He sat by the fire after Victoria and Sylvia left and took careful stock of his situation. Clear dungeon floor 1 before Act 1 ended. Or receive death CG 1381. Find some way to remove the holy glow from his situation before the current saint was replaced. Locate Ellie before her self-imposed 1-week deadline expired, and figure out why he was apparently actually blessed by a goddess he had made up as an excuse. So much for hiding in a cave until the credits rolled. He opened his status panel to check for changes. Stats were the same: pretty face, terrible luck. Then he flipped to his skills page and nearly choked. Dark Magic Affinity. Level 10. Not level 1. Not level 3. 10. Victoria, chosen by the gods as the literal hero, did not have level 10 affinity in any element. Sylvia, blessed by a goddess, did not reach 10. And the truly insane part, dark magic did not exist in this game. 81 playthroughs. He had read every lore document, every hidden text, every background fragment. Dark magic appeared only as a footnote about an extinct religion. No character could use it, no skill tree, nothing. But his panel now showed brand new dark element skills sitting there, like they had always belonged. Dark Arm Guard, Dark Wave. Does the goddess of night actually exist in this world? And if so, why him? Then a pitch-black cat with glowing green eyes appeared on a rock beside him, tail swishing, staring like it had been there the entire time. He heard a massive splash from the dark river below. Someone had fallen again, in his river, in his section of the dungeon. Princess Lilith Karn had gotten bored, disguised herself, dodged her 3 maids, and decided to prove she could handle dungeon content alone. She was strolling across a stone bridge in the shallow zone, feeling invincible, when a tentacle found her ankle and yanked her straight into the water. A fire prodigy, in a dark underground river, where fire magic was as useful as a chocolate teapot. Every spark she summoned got instantly snuffed by the current. Her lungs burned, her vision faded. At the very last second, a warm hand shot through the freezing water and grabbed her wrist. He dragged her out, confirmed she was breathing, and turned to leave. Standard procedure at this point. She coughed up half the river, started to say thanks, looked at his face and froze. Greg, why is it you? Interesting. She recognized him. He had no idea who she was, just some first year based on her sleeve badge. She caught herself quickly, switched to a completely ordinary student voice. Everyone knew who he was, she said. He was famous among the freshmen. Famous, he meant infamous. He did not feel like chatting. He turned and walked away. Job done. Girl alive. Moving on. She ran around and blocked his path. She was Lily Callow, daughter of the Callow merchant family. And she did not owe anyone favors. He stopped. Something about the phrasing hit different. She wanted to repay him, genuinely, without blackmail or accusations. He stared at her. After a world designed to hate him on sight, meeting someone with basic human decency felt like finding water in a desert. Her stomach growled loudly, filling the silent cave with maximum embarrassment echo. He invited her to dinner. She looked at him like he had claimed he could fly. Nobles did not cook. A duke's son knowing his way around a kitchen was technically possible, but deeply suspicious. 3 low-level monsters jumped out of the shadows as he led her toward camp. He flicked his hand backward without turning around. 3 fireballs, 0 startup delay, 3 perfect headshots. 1 monster cooked to a beautiful crisp, skin perfectly charred, meat probably tender inside. He picked it up by the leg, inspected it with a chef's eye, and nodded. The hide is already crispy. This one's going to taste great. Lily stood there, mouth hanging open, brain visibly short-circuiting. The version of Greg Sass she had heard about was a talentless idiot who fled campus crying. The version in front of her one-shotted monsters without looking, then critiqued the sear on their corpse like a professional chef reviewing a steak. The math was not amazing. But for him, this was just Tuesday. 5 days underground had turned him into a warrior chef hybrid. He killed the ingredients and prepared the meal, full dungeon farm-to-table experience. Back at camp, he went to the river to prep dinner, while Lily dried her clothes by the fire. She found some gray hairs on the ground. He told her Victoria and Sylvia had visited recently. She nearly choked on air behind him and recovered fast. But weren't he and Victoria supposed to hate each other? We've made up, actually, he said, completely casual. Like the biggest school drama of the year was a minor misunderstanding between acquaintances. He was hoping she would spread that around. His villain reputation was a death flag delivery system, and he wanted it dismantled. Lily seemed fascinated, like he was a puzzle where every new piece contradicted the last one. Her stomach growled again. She straightened up with enormous dignity and pretended it did not happen. Then she tried steering the conversation somewhere useful. What did he think of Victoria and Sylvia compared to Princess Lilith? He paused, turning the meat skewers. The firelight caught his face dramatically. Then he delivered his expert assessment at rapid-fire speed. Sylvia wins in the chess department. Victoria is absolutely lethal in the leg category. Lilith is an all-rounder between those two areas. Each has their own strengths. The cave went dead silent. Then Lily erupted off the ground, face red, screaming that she had meant their fighting strength, their combat ability. He considered this. She had asked him to compare 3 girls. She had not specified criteria. He had given an honest, comprehensive, physically observable assessment. Was that not what comparison meant? And then the detail that would haunt him later. He had just casually described Princess Lilith's figure to Princess Lilith's face. While she was disguised, she could not even get properly angry because she was pretending to be a merchant's daughter. He had mapped the situation completely wrong. He thought she was a background character, the gossipy fan club type who ships the main couples, and blushes. He had an entire wholesome conversation script ready. Ask about the heroines. Guide her toward admitting which one she liked. Wholesome older brother bonding energy. But she wanted to talk about combat matchups. Fine. Strongest of the 3, Victoria. No question. Lily practically launched off the ground. How? Lilith mastered Inferno Blast at level 10. How could a commoner beat that? The way her eyes lit up when she said Princess Lilith's name, chest puffed, chin raised, voice full of worship, told him everything. She was definitely in Lilith's fan club. A kid, he had cleared this game 81 times. Lilith was a genius, yes, a greenhouse prodigy with talent, royal resources, and the work ethic to match. Untouchable on paper. But Victoria had grown up training under a legendary archmage, whose teaching style was essentially war crimes against children. Icicles to the face as wake-up calls, fireballs during cardio, lectures held inside Monster Nest. Victoria's combat instincts were forged in an absolute hellscape. She had been dancing on the edge of death since she was a kid. Lilith was a greenhouse prodigy. Victoria was a battlefield survivor. Big difference. In the original game, their placement match ends with Victoria baiting Lilith into burning all her mana on Inferno Blast, then dodging and winning. Watch tomorrow's placement match, he said. Victoria will use a feint to make Lilith waste her Inferno Blast, and then she'll win. Lily huffed. You say that like you can see the future. He did not push it. She would see for herself. The meat was done. Golden brown, perfectly crispy outside, juicy inside. Dungeon pepper seasoning giving it an amazing smoky kick. He handed Lily a skewer. She stared at it with visible internal conflict, surrendering to the enemy versus not starving. She snatched it with zero hesitation. The body knows what the body wants. She took one tiny skeptical bite. The skin cracked, hot tender. Flavor-bursting meat flooded her mouth. Her chewing slowed to a reverent crawl. Every criticism she had prepared evaporated. Her brain had one single thought ringing through it like a cathedral bell. It was delicious. The dungeon chef remained undefeated. Lily left eventually, and he learned what happened when she returned to her dorm that night. She walked in at nearly 10 in the evening, soaking wet, covered in dirt, wearing a disguise. To 3 maids who were approximately 15 minutes from a full panic attack. She pulled off her disguise device, and her plain features sharpened into something entirely different. Boring brown hair turned into blazing red. The merchant's daughter became exactly who she actually was. But at the time, to him, she was just Lily, the nice random girl. Her maids tackled her with questions. She tried to play it cool. I was just visiting a friend. All 3 maids instantly, in unison, you're lying. Apparently her tell was eyes drifting up and right while twirling her hair. She had zero poker face with these people. The maids pressed for a name. She refused. One noticed the complicated expression and the red face and immediately went full gossip mode. She bolted into her room, slammed the door, locked it. But you haven't eaten dinner. One maid called through the door. I already ate. 3 maids looked at each other in shock. She never carried money. She could not cook, which meant someone else had fed her. Behind that locked door, Lilith lay on her silk bed, staring at the ceiling, swinging her feet in the moonlight, thinking about him. Not romantically. More like trying to solve a puzzle that kept changing shape. When she had offered to repay him for saving her life, he had just scratched his head and said keeping supporting Princess Lilith was enough. He had told Lily, the fan club member, to cheer for the princess, not knowing he was talking to the princess. He had given up a valuable favor for literally nothing. In her world, that was insane. Nobles always collected debts. She also could not stop thinking about how relaxed she had felt around him. No need to perform. No carefully chosen words. And the food. She was still thinking about the food. But then the cold realization hit her. He had been easy with Lily Callow, the ordinary girl. If he learned she was actually the second princess, the sister of his former betrothed, everything would change. Stiffness, formality, distance, just like everyone else who discovered who she really was. That thought stung more than she expected. She buried it under competitive fire. He said I'd lose to Victoria because of a feint. I'll show him tomorrow. Down in the dungeon, the fire burned warm. The loud girl was gone. Peace had returned. He cleared his throat and spoke into the empty cave. Hey, goddess of night. Silence, just fire crackling and water flowing. Then, meow. Soft and lazy. From behind the biggest shadow, the darkness rippled, and out walked a jet-black cat with glowing green eyes, moving with the elegance of something that was definitely not just a cat. He figured it out easily. A goddess of darkness appearing as a black cat was the most classic setup in every fantasy story ever written. She might as well have worn a name tag. She told him he should show more respect. He gave her his opinion on that very directly. He wanted nothing to do with beings like her. His life was already a disaster. He just wanted to survive quietly. So please, he said, looking her dead in those creepy green eyes, just leave me alone. The goddess was not deterred. She had already placed her mark on him. Their fates were bound. This could not be undone. He demanded to know when he had agreed to any of this. She had just slapped a blessing on him without consent. That was an auto-enrolling subscription with a hidden cancel button. She told him, without emotion, how many beings throughout history had sacrificed everything for even a fraction of her attention. Good for them. I'm not them. She explained, still calm, that if he was merely a disposable piece, he would not have received such generous gifts. Her gaze drifted meaningfully across his body. Level 10 Dark Magic Affinity. Theoretical maximum. Mentioned in lore. Never achieved by any playable character. Even Sylvia, blessed by the goddess of light, only hit level 8. This was not a throwaway investment. This was venture capital, or a hostage situation with benefits. Furthermore, she said, her voice going quiet and serious, when I said our fates are bound, that was not a metaphor. She jumped down, landed in front of him, and looked up with those bottomless green eyes. If you die, I will also perish. They shared the same divine core. He covered his face with both hands and let out a sound of pure anguish. He had gone from expendable villain with 1,386 death scenes, to guy hiding in a cave-eating rabbit, to fake messenger of a made-up goddess, to actual deity sharing a soul with said goddess, all in one day. He did not ask for this. He did not want to be a god. Being a god meant responsibility. It meant enemies. It meant plot relevance. He just wanted to grill meat in his cave until the credits rolled. The goddess told him her name, Nightmare. It echoed through the cave with supernatural weight. He demanded she transform into a gorgeous tall woman with an incredible figure, the bare minimum standard for goddess credibility. She explained, not without amusement, that she had been disconnected from belief systems for too long. Her divine power had withered. Even maintaining the cat form was pushing her limits. Classic power-depleted goddess setup. An ancient deity whose religion had been erased centuries ago. No worshippers meant no power. He sighed and moved on to question 2. What was he, exactly? She told him. A being bound deeply to a divine core while retaining independent will and form, traditionally called a god-man. He rejected this title with every fiber of his being. Nightmare considered, then granted him one of her own divine names instead. From this moment forward, he could call himself the King of Night. He paused. That one was actually pretty cool. He would take it. Then he asked the question that had been eating him alive. The real one. She could have bonded with a dying hero, a desperate sage, a vengeful prince, any of the classic candidates for divine partnership. So, why him? Nightmare began circling him slowly, 1 lap, 2 laps, 3 laps. Those creepy green eyes never blinking. Then she stopped and said, because you are special, Greg Sass. I can sense within you the ability to conquer all 5 great dungeons. 5 great dungeons. He recognized the term immediately. The Academy Dungeon, his current lovely home. The Duchy Dungeon under frozen glaciers up north. The Empire Dungeon beneath the Imperial capital. The Ocean Dungeon at the bottom of the deepest sea trench. The Demon Realm Dungeon in the heart of Demon Territory. In 81 playthroughs, he had never seen a single completed guide for even one of them. Players poked around the first few floors, grabbed rare loot, and left. Why would anyone grind a death dungeon when they could be triggering the Ice Queen's secret romance event? He told her plainly, if she had chosen him hoping he would voluntarily clear 5 dungeons, she had chosen wrong. But then she told him what those dungeons actually were. Not natural formations, seals, tombs. They imprisoned beings of extreme danger, entities whose nature and purpose were fundamentally alien to this world. If they fully awakened and broke free, annihilation. He assumed she meant the Demon King, That was fine. The heroines handled him in the main story. Nightmare stared at him with the confusion of someone who had just heard something genuinely baffling. Demon King. That entity would not even register in the era I was active. What I speak of are the outer gods. Outer gods. He chewed on those words, in 81 complete playthroughs across every dialogue, every lore fragment, every hidden text. That phrase had appeared exactly 0 times. This was outside his game knowledge entirely. A setting that should not exist. She said it with genuine sadness. After all these ages of slumber, not a single living being even remembered the name of the outer gods anymore. And nobody explored the dungeons that served as their prisons. Obviously not, he said. Nobody went deeper than they had to. The nightmare said something that stopped him completely. She observed, thoughtfully, that humans displayed astonishing courage when confronted with unknown territory. Beneath a beautiful female skirt charging forward fearlessly wave after wave, yet faced with dungeons that might hold the key to their world's survival, they showed only fear and retreat. He stared at her. She blinked innocently. He rubbed his forehead. He told her straight. He would clear a dungeon if it was the only way to survive. He would not go looking for extra dungeons to die in. Everything she had told him about outer gods was unverifiable. None of it existed in the original game. And as long as the heroines followed the main storyline and beat the Demon King, the world got saved anyway. If outer gods existed and woke up someday, when? 100 years from now? 1,000? By then, he would be dust. Not his problem. Nightmare took his rejection without drama. No guilt trip. No chosen one speech. She simply said this was a gamble on her part. She had no right to force his choices. If the worst day came, they would walk to the end together. At least the road to the afterlife would not be lonely. Then she hopped down, curled up by the fire, tucked her head into her paws, and started purring within 5 seconds. They had been discussing the apocalypse. She fell asleep like a house cat after a big meal. He found himself respecting it. She stated her case, accepted his answer, and went to sleep. No manipulation, no emotional blackmail. The peace lasted for seconds before he smacked his own forehead. Ellie the maid. The 1-week deadline. He had been debating cosmic theology with the cat and completely forgotten about the woman who would storm this dungeon and throw him a funeral while he was still alive. Tomorrow night. He would go tomorrow night. He lay down on his school jacket on the cold stone floor, rocks jabbing his spine, damp chills seeping through, stared at the dark ceiling, and made himself a promise. Once this chaos settled, he was upgrading this cave. His last thought before sleep, please let the placement exam go according to script. His entire survival plan depended on that gray-haired protagonist clearing the game properly. That morning, across campus, Lilith woke up in her silk princess bed with his voice echoing in her head. Specifically the part where he told Lily the fan club member that keeping supporting Princess Lilith was enough repayment. She made a noise like a dying animal, yanked the blanket over her head, and rolled back and forth having a crisis. After several rolls, she exploded out of the covers, sat up with her red hair going in 17 directions, and constructed a brilliant theory. None of yesterday actually happened. Greg Sass was an arrogant, disowned loser. He could not possibly have been interesting, or saved her life, or cooked that food. Stress stream. Obviously, she had never left her room. Then her maid walked in and said, even if you're excited about your new friend, you shouldn't neglect basic grooming. Friend. The maids remembered last night. Which meant last night happened. Which meant the dungeon happened. Which meant he happened. Welcome to reality, Your Highness. She grabbed the silk cloth, slapped it over her face, and proceeded to spend an extra 20 minutes on grooming, moisturizer, fresh outfit, fire-themed hair clips. This was entirely for the exam, for nothing else, for no one in particular. She marched out radiating competitive fire. Her motivation had shifted completely. No longer about proving she was the best. Now it was about proving him wrong. She was planning a post-exam trip to his cave specifically to gloat. He had unknowingly become a princess's primary motivation through accidental insults. Across campus, Victoria and Sylvia were walking toward the arena. Sylvia was worried. Her first opponent was Princess Lilith, someone who could already use Inferno Blast at their level. Please be careful. Victoria stopped, turned, patted Sylvia's pink hair, and said with rock-solid certainty, relax. I absolutely cannot lose to her. But here was the thing. Victoria had her own secret motivation. She reached into her pocket and squeezed the reflect gem he had given her. She was not just fighting for better class placement. She was fighting because the thought of him sitting underground with a smug grin, imagining her losing, made her furious. Lilith. I'll win, and then rub it in Greg's face. Victoria. I'll win so Greg can't laugh at me. both of them marching into battle with maximum determination. Both fueled by the same sleeping person underground who was not even watching. He had somehow become the invisible motivational coach for both sides of a fight he already knew the outcome of. He was asleep on a rock next to a cat goddess, drooling, missing the most dramatic moment of the entire first chapter. The exam arena was a massive open-air coliseum packed with students, teachers, and noble VIP spectators. The moment Victoria walked in, the trash talk started. One slick-back noble boy turned up his volume on purpose. At least Greg Sass had the right idea, trying to put commoners in their place. Victoria stopped walking. Her eyes went sub-zero. Sylvia grabbed her arm. Don't. That's exactly what they want. Victoria stood there, chest heaving, wrestling her rage back into its cage. After a few seconds, she opened her eyes, straightened her collar, and turned toward those smirking nobles with perfect composure. Funny, she said, voice clear and cutting. That terrible Greg Sass you're mocking, at least when he had something nasty to say. He said it to my face. Dead silence spreading across the arena. Unlike certain people who only dare whisper insults from behind a crowd, like rats squeaking in a gutter. She let that sink in, then delivered the kill shot. So in my book, he's better than all of you. Which means you're not even as good as Greg Sass. He felt that one from underground. The sneeze hit so hard nightmare jumped off his chest. The woman who had killed him the most times in the original game had just publicly used his name. As the floor of human decency, he had become the minimum standard. The bar was literally on the ground, and those nobles failed to clear it. The noble boys went from red to white to green. One tried to fight back. He was not even a noble anymore to Sohn. How dare she compare them? A new voice cut through like a blade. The crowd parted. Lilith walked in like the sun had decided to take human form. Red hair gleaming, uniform perfect. I definitely spent extra time getting ready, and will deny it forever look in full effect. She glanced at the noble boys with the casual dismissal you give a fly. They immediately stared at their shoes. Nobody talks back to a princess. Then she said, loud enough for everyone, Greg Sass is indeed more interesting than people who only know how to gossip behind others' backs. The princess defending him by name in public. The same princess who supposedly hated him because he had nearly married her sister. Victoria was visibly confused. Something did not add up. But Lilith was not there for diplomacy. She walked straight up to Victoria, looked her in the eye, and stuck out her hand. You're Victoria. I've heard about you. Don't disappoint me in our match. No small talk. No pleasantries. Pure competitive energy. Victoria paused for exactly 1 second, then smiled, that quiet, dangerous smile, and grabbed her hand. That should be my line. To rivals. One handshake. Electricity practically visible between them. And somewhere deep underground, a golden-haired idiot sneezed again. Completely unaware he had just become the bonding topic for both combatants. Professor Grace Quinn ran the exam with the emotional warmth of a sharpened blade. No motivational speech. No warm-up. Silence, then begin. Scoring on magic control, tactics, creativity, and mental toughness. You could lose the fight and make A class. You could win ugly and get dumped in D class. The early matches set the tone. An Earl's daughter with wood element magic locked down her opponent in under a minute. A class. No hesitation. 2 students flailing at each other with basic elemental spells ended in C and D class, respectively. Then came match 6. Sylvia Lorraine versus Angela White. Sylvia walked up looking like a baby deer at a job interview, nervous, fidgety, uncomfortable. Angela had a proper magic staff with a split gem and took one look at nervous little Sylvia and thought, easy win. She went nuclear immediately. Full power wind blade, split into 2. Flying at Sylvia in a pincer attack from above and below. Sylvia stumbled backward half a step, did not dodge, did not block. A wall of pure white holy light materialized from nothing in front of her, solid as a mountain. Sacred runes flowing across its surface. Both wind blades smashed into it and dissolved. The arena erupted. Instant cast defense. Her magic control is insane. Angela gritted her teeth and bet everything on one shot, Hurricane Pierce. The strongest single-point penetration spell in basic wind magic. The impact screamed like metal on metal. The light wall shuddered, flickered, runes spinning wildly. 3 seconds. 5. 10. The wall held. The wind drill faded to nothing. Angela collapsed to one knee, completely drained. Victor, Sylvia Lorraine, rating, A class. Sylvia bowed shyly, then scurried off the stage like a startled rabbit and grabbed Victoria's arm. I did it. Victoria gave her a thumbs up. Your turn now. Be careful. Then Quinn's voice rang out. And for the first time even she sounded like she was looking forward to this. Match 7. Victoria Cecil vs. Lilith Karn. The entire arena held its breath. The match he had predicted from his cave. The one Lilith had sworn she would win to prove him wrong. The one Victoria had sworn she would win so he could not smirk about it. Both of them fueled by spite toward the same sleeping guy underground. When they walked onto that stage, the arena went silent like someone had hit the mute button. On one side, Victoria Cecil. No money, no family name, no resources. Just raw talent and the survival instincts of someone who had grown up dodging fireballs from a lunatic teacher. On the other side, Lilith Karn, second princess, fire prodigy, backed by the Royal Magic Council. The walking natural disaster who had definitely spent extra time on her hair this morning. They traded words on the platform like rival protagonists meeting for the first time. Victoria, I don't know why you stood up for me earlier, but I won't hold back. Lilith, chin raised, smirking, who stood up for you? I just said what I felt. And I don't need you to hold back. Victoria moved first. Smart. She knew Lilith was a fire specialist, so she opened with water magic. 5 precision water arrows in a fan formation. Lilith did not flinch. A chain of pure compressed fire materialized from her fingertips and she whipped it in a wide arc. Every water arrow vaporized on contact, steam exploding everywhere. Victoria used the steam cloud as cover, sidestepping the chain's follow-through. The tip singed her sleeve, close. Nice reflexes, Lilith complimented. Then she raised her other hand. No warning, no chanting, no staff, just raw palm to air casting. Over 20 compressed fire arrows materialized behind her, all locked onto Victoria like heat-seeking weapons and launched simultaneously. A wall of flame covering every possible escape route. Victoria's eyes went wide for a real second. She had expected sloppy noble fireballs. This was precision carpet bombing from someone who had trained since childhood. She made a split-second call. Both palms slammed the ground. Earth wall. A massive slab of stone erupted from the arena floor, tall as her body, wide enough to fully shield her. 20+ fire arrows detonated against it in rapid succession. Boom, boom, boom. Fire and rock fragments everywhere. Heat waves blasting outward hard enough that the audience felt it on their faces. When the barrage stopped, the wall was scorched and cratered but standing. Victoria stepped out from behind it, dusty hair, slightly heavy breathing, but eyes still sharp as knives. Across the stage, Lilith was still smiling, but behind those ruby eyes, something had changed. For the first time, she was taking this completely seriously, because she was starting to believe what he had told her. If I get careless, I might actually lose to this person. And her second thought, predictably, I absolutely cannot let that annoying caveman be right about me. Victoria dragged the fight into a war of attrition. Wind blades, water shots, earth spikes, cycling through 3 elements, never committing to hard. Relentless, calculated pressure, no flashy moves. Lilith was getting frustrated. She expected to dominate, not grind through a stalemate against someone who fought like wet leather. Then Victoria slipped. Her foot caught a broken stone tile and she stumbled backward, wide open, completely defenseless. Lilith's instincts ignited. Every drop of fire mana surged to her palm. The air warped from heat. A white-hot ball of compressed destruction formed. Inferno blast. The nuclear option. The audience gasped. Teachers sat up straight. She was a millisecond from launching it. And then his face appeared in her head. His stupid, smirking, campfire-lit face. Victoria will use a feint to bait your Inferno blast. Lilith froze. Her brain split in half. One side screaming, this is real. She genuinely slipped. Fire now. The other side whispering, but what if that cave idiot was right? She thought about his other words, but the fire, keep supporting Princess Lilith, said with that annoying casual warmth. She cursed him internally, then made the most insane decision possible. She believed him. Instead of aiming at Victoria's current position, she thought, if this is a feint, where would she dodge? Her eyes locked onto a crater behind Victoria, the obvious escape route. She aimed Inferno Blast at the crater instead. Victoria, thinking her trap had worked perfectly, dove into the hole, sealed the top with earth magic, and thought, I win. Then it got hotter. Way too hot. She poked a hole to peek outside. A white-hot sun of pure annihilation was flying directly at her face. Boom! His prediction was wrong. For the first time across 81 playthroughs worth of knowledge, the script had changed. Because he had opened his mouth and told Lily what would happen. She had been able to counter Victoria's counter. He had changed the timeline. By showing off his future knowledge to impress a girl he thought was a random nobody, He had accidentally given the actual opponent classified intel on Victoria's strategy. This was entirely his fault, and he had been asleep. He slept through the entire exam, woke up, and it was already nighttime. The conversation with Nightmare had knocked him out for 14 hours. He noticed the black cat was gone. Was last night a dream? His shadow rippled. Nightmare crawled out of it. She told him she was not a black cat. She was the goddess of night. Show some respect. She wanted to stay in his shadow going forward. She didn't want to sleep on cold rocks. He told her if they were fate-bound, she suffered with him. That was how bonds were built. She slipped back into his shadow. He demanded she come out. She ignored him. He stared at his shadow, which had briefly taken on a catgirl shape when he pushed too far, and decided this relationship was going to destroy his sanity. He had bigger problems. Tonight was Operation Stop his maid from committing domestic terrorism. Quick meal of dungeon jerky, then he headed for the dungeon exit. Sneak out under cover of night. Avoid every location where original Greg had a death CG. Find Ellie. Convince her he was alive. Get back before sunrise. The campus was dark and quiet, just patrol lights and the occasional distant silhouette of a night shift teacher. He checked himself for anything noisy, took a deep breath, and shot out of the dungeon entrance like an arrow. Silent steps, perfect execution, everything going exactly according to plan. Then someone burst out from behind a statue at the exact same moment. They collided at full speed. Faint lamplight hit her face. Small oval face, neat brown hair, clear chestnut eyes wincing in pain. Lily Callow. He looked at her. Looked at the dungeon path behind him. Looked at her outfit, dark sneaking clothes, hair tied back. Looked at her face again. Was she trying to sneak into the dungeon? At night? Alone? After he had specifically told her yesterday it was dangerous. She was here 12 hours later in full stealth gear. What was wrong with the side characters in this world? He asked why she was there at this hour. She started to say something, stopped, went through for colors, and could not produce a single coherent excuse. He read the situation the wrong way. Gym rats caught doing secret midnight training. Library nerds spotted studying at 3 in the morning. He recognized the behavior pattern. Don't worry, he said helpfully. I won't tell anyone you're sneaking into the dungeon for extra training. She grabbed the cover story with both hands. Yes, that was exactly it. Extra training. Definitely not here to see him. Don't get the wrong idea. He offered his hand to help her up, standard courtesy. He did not think twice. She stared at his hand like it was a live explosive. Then she snatched it like it was about to disappear forever. Their fingers touched. Her face went from pink to full tomato. He could feel her pulse hammering through her palm. He thought she was embarrassed about getting caught training secretly. Her blood pressure must be through the roof. In reality, as he would learn much later, this was a princess experiencing physical contact with a non-family male for the first time in her entire life. But he thought she was a merchant's daughter, so none of that registered. He said he had urgent business and turned to leave. 3 steps later, she grabbed his sleeve. She opened her mouth to speak. Nothing came out, just a red-faced girl clutching his sleeve, vibrating with unspoken words. He waited. 2 seconds. 5. Still nothing. He gently freed his sleeve and started walking. Princess Lilith defeated Victoria with Inferno Blast in the placement exam. She's way stronger than you predicted. She screamed it at his back at maximum volume, then immediately bolted in the completely opposite direction and vanished into the night. He stood there, hand half raised, watching her disappear. His first thought was that she had panicked from getting caught and yelled random exam results at him as a stress response. His second thought arrived 3 seconds later like a delayed explosion. Lilith won. That had never happened in 81 playthroughs. Victoria always won this fight. His prediction had changed the outcome. He had told Lily, the fan club member, the strategy. That information had reached. Wait, how would a random fan club member's knowledge affect the fight? Unless she could somehow communicate directly with the princess. Something about Lily Callow did not add up at all. But he did not have time for this. He had a maid to intercept. Meanwhile, what he did not know was happening across campus. Victoria was sitting in a hospital bed, right arm and shoulder wrapped in bandages, staring at the ceiling. Sylvia sat beside her for 2 hours trying everything. Just one loss. You were amazing out there. The upperclassmen were so impressed. Victoria answered each attempt with a flat and more silence. Polite enough not to snap at her best friend, but somewhere far away in her own head. When the nurse came and told Sylvia visiting hours were ending, Sylvia left reluctantly, looking back at every other step. The door clicked shut. Victoria's straight back slumped. Her left hand clenched the bed sheet until her knuckles went white. The memories came flooding back uninvited. Fire, screaming. her father standing at the door with a wood-cutting axe. A mountain of a man who disappeared in seconds. Her mother shoving her into an underground tunnel with a bone-crushing hug. Run. Don't look back. Live. Little Sylvia dragging and kicking, screaming, clawing Victoria through that tunnel while their village burned behind them. That night had killed the little girl and forged the weapon. And now she sat in a moonlit hospital room asking the question that hurt worse than any burn. Can someone like me really make it to the end? And this was his fault. All of it. He had given Lilith Victoria's winning strategy without even knowing it. He had turned a confidence-building victory into the thing that nearly broke the hero. 81 playthroughs of knowledge, used to accidentally sabotage the one person the entire world needed to succeed. Through all of it, Victoria kept coming back to one thought. She touched the reflect gem under her hospital gown, the gem he had given her. She had planned to dodge the blast, use the explosion smoke as cover, activate the gem, and win with a blind angle wind cannon. Clean. Guaranteed. She never got to use the gem, and that made her feel something she hated. Guilt toward the person she was supposed to despise. He had trusted her with something real, and she felt like she had wasted it. She hated that feeling more than losing, because it was complicated. And Victoria did not do complicated emotions about people she was supposed to hate. She did not know yet that his midnight hospital visit, the wrong room, the wrong patient, the crumpled uniform, the accidental pep talk about long roads and next rounds had already cracked something open. Inside her, he had crawled through campus avoiding death only to sob over a stranger in a hospital bed. Delivered an accidental masterpiece of motivation to the actual Victoria by accident, and then disappeared back into the dark. His -10 luck stat did not just try to kill him. It made sure he humiliated himself beautifully on the way there. 2 days later, Victoria looked up from her hospital bed with fire back in her gray eyes. Sounds like Lilith thinks she's the strongest first year now. When I get out of here, I'm challenging her again. Sylvia burst into tears and tackle-hugged her injured best friend. You're back. I knew it. I knew you'd pull through. Victoria awkwardly patted her with her good arm, then, quietly looking away. She said it was not entirely on her own. She did not say his name, but they both knew whose words had cracked the wall. The protagonist was back on her feet. His survival plan stayed intact. He just needed her to heal fast enough to help him kill some goblins. Before the world's timer ran out, the dungeon had grown stranger, while he was occupied with surface disasters. Goblins had taken up residence at the only passage connecting the shallow zone to the mid-level zone. Monsters that should not be in the shallows at all. Something had pushed them up from below. Nightmare could hear a dull rhythmic sound coming from deeper inside, something foreign, something that did not belong. He connected it immediately to 3 upperclassmen he had spotted entering the dungeon days earlier, who had not come back out. Whatever they had done down there had displaced an entire monster population. That was not a casual weekend project. He recruited Sylvia with a perfectly layered excuse, dungeon acting strange, students possibly trapped inside, urgency without explanation. They exited through Victoria's hospital window, crept across campus in the dark, and entered the dungeon together. Nightmare, riding in his shadow, announced that Sylvia smelled distinctly of the goddess of light, her ancient enemy. His party consisted of himself, a saint candidate blessed by the deity his patron goddess hated most, and said goddess riding in his shadow making catty divine commentary. The dungeon run was going to be fantastic. They reached the connecting cavern and found the goblin camp. About 15 green-skinned figures scattered across the space, rusty weapons, crude bows, grunting at each other in their garbage language. Sylvia grabbed his sleeve hard enough to almost tear it off. So many. Relax. We can handle this. Confidence is contagious. She needed a full dose. He outlined the plan. He takes them head on. She stays behind him. Buffs and barriers on rotation. Sylvia raised her wand, whispered a prayer, and warm waves of light washed over him. Strength enhancement, agility boost. After days of solo dungeon survival running on spite and seasoned rabbit meat, having actual support magic was like going from a bicycle to a sports car. He exploded from cover. Dark arm guard activated. Black mist erupted around both forearms, the same void-hungry darkness that had erased a bronze bell from existence. The first goblin swung a rusty cleaver at his neck. He raised his left arm. The blade touched the black mist and stopped existing. The front half simply vanished. The goblin stood there holding a bare handle, blinking stupidly. His right fist, wrapped in living darkness, smashed into the second goblin's face. The mist surged forward, engulfed its head for a split second, then pulled back. The goblin toppled backward with empty eyes, like something essential had been extracted from its existence. To down into seconds. The rest started screaming. Senior Greg, left side. Sylvia's voice, sharp with urgency. A light barrier materialized just in time to deflect an arrow aimed at his ribs. With her buffs active and her barriers covering his blind spots, he was operating at a level these goblins simply could not match. Every weapon that touched his arm guards got partially consumed. Every punch carried shadow corrosion that dropped goblins instantly. A black tornado ripping through green bodies while a pink-haired saint candidate kept him buffed and shielded from behind. Sylvia was firing sacred light bolts at flanking goblins, refreshing buffs on cooldown, and calling out threats like she had been doing this her whole life. They were winning completely. One-sided demolition. Then he heard it, a screeching chant from behind a tall rock to their side. A goblin shaman had snuck around to their flank while he was busy with the warriors. Staff raised, aimed directly at Sylvia. "Sylvia, behind you." She turned, made direct eye contact with the shaman, beady eyes full of malice. Bone staff glowing with a sickly red energy ball aimed at her face. She froze, zero combat experience, kicking in at the worst possible moment. Her legs gave out and she dropped to the ground. The shaman cackled and fired, a corrupted red sphere screaming toward her unprotected face. Too far, to goblin warriors between them. He could not reach her in time. One option, Dark Wave, level 1. Untested. Unknown. He had no idea what it did. He poured every drop of dark mana into his palm and fired. He was picturing something cool. A shadow beam, a roaring void blast. Something dramatic. What came out of his hand was a tiny black dot the size of a thumbnail. His soul left his body. That was it. That was the attack. He could sneeze something more threatening. The shaman saw it too. It literally laughed, waving its bone staff to swat the pathetic little dot away. Meanwhile, the red death ball was inches from Sylvia's terrified face. The tiny black dot passed through the bone staff like it was not there, like it existed on a different physical plane entirely. Then it silently entered the shaman's chest. Nothing happened for exactly 1 second. Then the system notifications went insane. Weakness, blindness, confusion, fear, mana disruption, life drain, sensory deprivation, limb paralysis, mental collapse, instant death judgment, all at once. The shaman's victory grin twisted into agony. Its bone staff snapped in half on its own. Black mist leaked from its eyes, ears, nose, and mouth simultaneously. It seized once, went rigid as a board, and fell backward like a chopped tree, dead before it hit the ground. The red energy ball dissolved into nothing an inch from Sylvia's nose. The remaining goblins stared at their dead shaman, made confused honking noises, and collectively decided today was not the day. He stood there, arms still extended, processing what had just happened. That pathetic little dot, the crumb he thought could not kill a fly, had just inflicted every negative status effect simultaneously. Dark Wave level 1 did not do damage. It did everything else. All at once. From a single pixel of darkness. That was not a spell. That was a war crime compressed into a thumbnail. He cleaned up the remaining terrified goblins, then rushed to Sylvia. She was still sitting on the ground, staring at the shaman's corpse with an expression caught between shock and awe. He crouched down, offered his hand. "Sylvia, you okay? Are you hurt?" She looked up at him, then slowly placed her hand in his, small, cold from fear. Her eyes widened slightly at the warmth still radiating from his hand after the fight. "I'm fine," she said quietly, face turning pink as he pulled her to her feet. She glanced at the shaman's corpse again, black mist still seeping from its face, frozen in an expression of absolute existential horror. She looked at him with curiosity, not fear. "That was you, wasn't it, Senior Greg?" He looked at the thumbnail-sized hole he had blown through reality's rulebook, at the shaman whose entire biological existence had been administratively terminated, and at the sweet girl looking at him like he had done something genuinely impressive. "Yeah," he said, "that was me." The passage to the mid-level zone was clear. The path forward was open. Behind them, the dungeon floor breathed differently now, the goblin camp scattered, the blockade broken, the first real obstacle of his quest finally behind him. Ahead, something deeper waited. Something that had displaced an entire monster population just by making noise. And somewhere in the academy above, a golden-haired maid was in the early stages of founding a secret underground religion. For a cat goddess. 3 maids were searching for a runaway red-haired princess who had already been fed dungeon barbecue. And a girl with gray eyes was squeezing a reflect gem in a hospital bed and thinking about the next fight. He stood at the threshold of the mid-level zone and took a long breath. He was level 17, a half-god with no real training, a holy chastity seal on his equipment, and a quest deadline ticking somewhere above the cave ceiling. His dark magic could dissolve bronze bells and hit everything at once. With a thumbnail-sized dot of void, his best support skill was Whimper Whimper level 4. which made enemies feel sorry for him to attack for seconds. He was, objectively, the least qualified person to be doing any of this. But the villain noble's redemption quest was still active. The timer was still running. The 5 great dungeons were still out there, and somewhere deep in at least one of them, something ancient was making sounds that did not belong in the world. Nightmare's voice drifted up from his shadow, quiet and certain. If the worst day comes, we will walk to the end together. He had no idea yet what the outer gods were. He had no idea what those 3 missing upperclassmen had activated in the dungeon's deep first floor. He had no idea that Catherine Roman had sent them there, or that she had already decided to cut her losses and move on. He had no idea that Lilith Karn was planning to march back into his dungeon the moment her schedule allowed, specifically to gloat about defeating Victoria. And he had absolutely no idea that Victoria, lying in that hospital room squeezing a gem he had given her, had already started thinking of him as something other than an enemy. All he knew was that the path was clear, his party was alive, and he had one job: clear the floor. Don't die. Keep the protagonist intact. Simple, practical, achievable. He turned to Sylvia, still holding his hand slightly longer than necessary, still looking at him with those wide, curious eyes. Ready to keep going? She straightened up, grabbed her wand, and nodded hard. Yes, let's go. They stepped into the dark together. Behind them, the shallow zone went quiet except for the river and the crackling memory of a campfire that had kept one very tired person alive for almost a week. Ahead of them, whatever had gone wrong in the deep first floor was still going wrong, still humming its unnatural rhythm into the stone walls like a heartbeat that did not belong to anything natural. But that was tomorrow's problem, or tonight's problem, or the next few minutes' problem. He was beginning to understand that in this world, the problems did not wait for convenient scheduling. They just kept arriving, one after another, with the cheerful persistence of a quest system that truly did not care about his retirement plans. 81 playthroughs of a game had given him every piece of knowledge that was now completely useless, because the story had stopped following the script the moment he walked into it. The timeline had changed. Characters were moving in directions the game had never written. Alliances were forming that no route had ever mapped. And at the center of all of it, motivating rivals, accidentally training heroines, founding religions by proxy, introducing future saints to the thrill of rule-breaking, was a dungeon hermit who just wanted to eat seasoned rabbit in peace. He had arrived in this world as the most doomed character ever coded. He was leaving the shallow zone as something considerably harder to kill. Not because he had become brave. Not because destiny had chosen him. Not because some goddess had handed him a neatly wrapped hero's journey with a bow on top. But because every time the ground tried to swallow him, he had found the angle, the loophole, the one weird skill that turned a near-death experience into a story worth telling. Dark Wave Level 1 did not do damage. It did everything else. Maybe that was also true of him. The torchlight of the mid-level zone stretched ahead, unfamiliar, unmapped, full of things the game had never showed him. For the first time since waking up in someone else's body, that did not feel like a disaster. It felt like a dungeon nobody had ever cleared, and he was already inside it.